Oh, GCM, good to see you. We're going to be talking about one of your favorite topics today, the police. Yes, Lord. Good morning. Okay, so let's see. I see GCM. I already said good morning to GCM before we ran the intro. Fit Life with Danielle is here. Good morning, Danny. Good morning. I see the other Danny's with us as well. Pitt, Danny, good morning. Scrimshaw says she's just going to listen and rest. Well, I will try to send you off with good dreams. We'll see what happens. But here we go. Fishing, golf, and guns. Hell yes. And Your Majesty. Good morning, Sergeant Major. So here's what I want to talk about this morning. And y'all, it's Tuesday, right? Yes, it is. It's Tuesday. I kind of wanted to cover this yesterday, but I really wanted to, because we're going to be talking about stuff that happened over the weekend with the Antifa activity. But of course, I really wanted to get to the fair tax stuff yesterday. It's tough to make a pick when you've got stuff like that. And I almost went with pushing the fair tax stuff to today and covering this yesterday because timeliness, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, so what happened was over the weekend. Hey, there's Mom. Good morning, Mom. Good morning. We have this article from the Post Millennial. Breaking: Atlanta burns as Antifa riot after comrade shot dead by cop in autonomous zone in a gunfight. Okay. So, according to the Post Millennial, on Saturday night, Antifa members took to the streets of Atlanta to throw rocks at and light fires outside of the Atlanta Police Foundation after the now suspended Atlanta Forest Twitter account called for a night of rage following the fatal shooting of one of their members, 26-year-old Manuel Esteban Pais Terán. So, wow, that doesn't sound like a terrorist. The Post Millennial editor-at-large Andy No tweeted, breaking: far-left extremists and Antifa gathering for revenge against law enforcement in Atlanta over the killing of their gunman at their autonomous zone, smashed up businesses, and set an Atlanta police vehicle on fire. And bear with me just a second, there was another article that I meant to pull up, and it looks like I might have missed it in the deluge because we're covering several articles this morning. I'm sure I can pull this up. I think WSB had it covers. We'll go with this one from the town hall. So, let's back up just a little bit. What happened, or what's happening? There is a facility being built and developed in Atlanta, which is being called Cop City. It's a police training facility. And I am going to lay a little bit of blame here on the police, but we'll get to that in a minute. So what happened is there was a gunfight outside of the police training facility, right? Antifa calls for violence after Georgia police shoots comrade. Antifa accounts on social media have been calling for a day of violence in response to police shooting and killing someone associated with the ongoing occupation of a forest near Atlanta, Georgia, that has been selected to be the site of a police academy. An officer was also shot during the shootout on Wednesday. So what happened is an Antifa terrorist attempted to murder a police officer, and he was awarded the Darwin Prize for his efforts. The occupation of the forest has been ongoing for months as far-left protesters are opposed to the proposed Atlanta Police Department training facility being built. GBI Director Michael Register told reporters the protesters shot first as officers were clearing out an encampment. An individual without warning shot a Georgia State Patrol trooper, Register said. Other law enforcement personnel returned gunfire in self-defense and evacuated the trooper to a safe area. The individual who fired upon law enforcement and shot the trooper was killed in the exchange of gunfire. The injured state trooper is in stable condition in ICU after completing surgery. He was shot in the pelvic area, and he was wearing a bulletproof vest. Okay, so pro tip from somebody who spent a lot of time in body armor, the bulletproof vest does not cover the pelvic area, okay? I'm 6.5 feet tall and about 270 in my fighting weight. So when I put on the triple extra large IOTV that's used by the U.S. Army, or was at the time I was enlisted. They've updated since then, but my body armor fit me like a bulletproof bikini top. It stopped right at the top edge of my rib cage, so I was always wide open to gut shots. And there's an attachment that you can hang from that piece of body armor that is commonly referred to as the tallywhacker, because what it is, it's a triangular shaped sheet of Kevlar that hangs down from the front edge, and it's supposed to cover your tender bits, your wedding tackle, but unfortunately in my case it basically covered my lunchbox. I couldn't tuck the damn thing into the top of my pants if I had to. So but when it says he was shot in the pelvic area, that man, y'all, the pelvic area is not center mass. Okay? It's that's cold-blooded. But that's what we're talking about when we talk about these Antifa people. So this morning I've also prepared for you another slideshow using the artificial intelligence generator that we've talked about in the past. And I did this for a very particular reason. I want to show you how the AI treats it. Okay, so first off, I deleted the first slide, but the first slide, it started with the AI generating a slide that said, Antifa, terrorists or freedom fighters? No, AI, they're not freedom fighters. They are terrorists. They are American citizens, by and large, conducting the activity of war within the borders of the United States against the interests of the individual United States. Right? Alex McDonald says the pelvis is center mass if it's all you can see. Yeah, the same is true for a headshot when you're in a church and the shooter happens to be taller than everybody that's crouching behind pews. Fair play, my man. But this is what the AI generated. Antifa, short for anti-fascist, is a loosely organized group of people who oppose fascism and the far right. Okay. Okay. The group has been linked to violent protests and riots in cities across the United States and Europe. Recently, Antifa has laid siege to an autonomous zone in Atlanta, Georgia, calling for the assassination of police in the area. Now, the only reason, because I ran this a couple times, the only reason this is in here is because in my prompt, I explicitly commented on calls for assassination of police in Georgia by Antifa. This cannot be left to stand. And what you saw this weekend is the result of a weak response by local government. So when we look at this, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and go a few more slides in. The autonomous zone in Atlanta, Georgia was established by Antifa to create a space for people to protest against police brutality and racism. Bullshit. It was created to protest against the establishment of a training facility, and that is what happened. Okay, the idea that Antifa is protesting brutality, police brutality, and racism, these are dog whistles, basically, that they use to say things like, "Oh, well, you won't let us set fire to buildings, but you'll let white people exist. How is that fair?" Like, okay, no. It's fair because white people existing does not equal buildings burning. But that's the whole of your activity, is the conduct of violence and the acts of war that Antifa conducts against the United States. Now, when I say against the United States, I want to go back to this. So Donald Trump announces, right? So we're talking about President Trump. This is an old article, and I want to make a very particular point here. Trump announces U.S. to designate Antifa as terrorist organization following violent protests. This comes as Trump has blamed Antifa for riots taking place across the country in response to the death of George Floyd, the unarmed black man who died May 25th while in police custody in Minneapolis after an officer kneeled on his neck for more than 8 minutes in an incident caught on video. And okay, that case has been tried and adjudicated, and there's a good argument to be made that justice was absolutely not served in that case because, well, quite simply, he died of asphyxiation. A man who had COVID and enough fentanyl in his system to kill an elephant died as a result of... Really? Floyd was a big old dude. I promise you could kneel on my neck for 8 minutes. It's Antifa and the radical left. Don't lay the blame on others, Trump tweeted Saturday. Now, at the same time, we had Joe Biden, and he said this in several different platforms and several different speeches, and most notably he said it explicitly in one of the debates with Donald Trump. Joe Biden denies Antifa organizations exist. Former Democrat Vice President Joe Biden denied the existence of organized Antifa groups during the first presidential debate in Cleveland, Ohio on Tuesday. Fox News anchor Chris Wallace, screw him, had asked President Trump if he was willing to condemn white supremacists and militia groups and to say that they need to stand down and not add to the violence in a number of these cities, as we saw in Kenosha and as we've seen in Portland. And this is why screw Chris Wallace, because if you recall, and you should because you're more than 4 years old, at the time, there was absolutely violence in the streets. There were buildings being burned. Not by Proud Boys or white supremacists. It was being done by clearly organized groups wearing uniforms, the black bloc, the all-black dress, and carrying flags with insignia. If that does not sound to you like an organization, then you don't understand what words mean. Which, hey, fair play, we are talking about Joe Biden here. Right? So, fine. Joe Biden doesn't understand what words mean. But he goes on to say, Antifa is an idea, not an organization. That's what his FBI director said. That's what his FBI director said. FBI Director Christopher Wray did say his agency is investigating those who identify as Antifa while committing serious crimes. Biden says that the FBI director said there's no such thing as Antifa, that there are no organized Antifa. Now, again, this is almost 4 years ago, but I want to remind you that the same Joe Biden and his now Vice President Kamala Harris, bail fund backed by Kamala Harris and Joe Biden staffers, bailed out alleged child abuser, docs indicate. Not just a child abuser, right? I've got other stories that say that they bailed out the same Antifa terrorists more than once. A bail fund promoted by Democratic Vice Presidential nominee Kamala Harris and many staffers on Joe Biden's campaign helped release an accused child abuser, documents obtained by Fox News indicate. Timothy Way Columbus, a 36-year-old man, is charged with first-degree criminal sexual conduct for allegedly penetrating a girl in 2015 when she was about 8 years old. A warrant was issued for his arrest, but he was later bailed out of jail and, according to a court document, filed to have his bail money returned to Minnesota Freedom Fund, the organization Harris and many Biden staffers asked their followers to donate to during the rioting in Minneapolis this year. Keep in mind, Harris also personally donated to that. That's a matter of public record, and she stated it openly in her various presentations, stumping for Joe after she dropped out with the worst performance of any single primary candidate in history, by the way. They just cannot run from this enough. And I want to remind you that when we talk about Christopher Wray making comments that, oh, well, there's no such thing as Antifa, we're talking about Christopher Wray, the head of the FBI, the same FBI that ran the obvious hoax investigation against Donald Trump over the Russiagate collusion garbage. And we just happened to have this article that just popped over the weekend. Oh, Stryker, you just got in. You missed everything, brother. Retired top FBI counterintelligence agent who led Trump-Russia probe arrested for his own ties to Russian oligarch. A former senior FBI counterintelligence official who spearheaded the Trump-Russia probe was arrested and charged over his own alleged ties to a sanctioned Russian oligarch amid the war in Ukraine. Charles McGonigal, the former special agent in charge of the FBI's counterintelligence division in New York, who retired in 2018, is charged with violating U.S. sanctions by agreeing to provide services to Oleg Deripaska, a sanctioned Russian oligarch. He was charged alongside Sergei Shestakov, a former Soviet and Russian diplomat who later became a U.S. citizen and a Russian interpreter for courts and government officials, through a 5-count indictment unsealed in Manhattan federal court Monday. This is according to Fox News, right? They were both arrested Saturday. The indictment is a rare move by federal prosecutors to bring charges against a former senior FBI official before a federal grand jury. So we already know that the whole Russia hoax was actively conducted and funded by the Democrat National Committee using their lawyers. And when we say their lawyers, understand we're talking about Perkins Coie. Perkins Coie is at such a level that they do the practice of law for the Democrat National Committee, and, you know, stolen top secret documents showing up in places they shouldn't be has been all the rage. Perkins Coie has a SCIF in their offices, a secure compartmentalized information facility in their offices for the handling of sensitive government classified documents and information on behalf of their client, the Democrat National Committee. Let that sink in. So now let's come to the part of the show where I blame the police for what's happening with the autonomous zone. Okay? A buddy of mine got us a lunch, and we sat down and had a conversation with Vernon Jones back in 2020 when this was all going on. And Vernon talked about having been the CEO of DeKalb County back when Freaknik was a big deal, and what an absolute pain in the ass the Freaknik guys were, and how much trouble, how much overtime had to be paid out to police officers, security, et cetera, et cetera. And he talked about the logistics and the strategies and the various problems that go on with an organized riot like that, and asked me in my expert capacity as someone who's dealt with actual terrorist organizations abroad, what I would do about things like the autonomous zone. And I said, I started off with Vernon, you don't even want to know how I would handle it, but let's understand something. What you are looking at when you look at an autonomous zone, this is not the same as a riot, right? This is not a protest that got out of hand. Right, you can make that argument for some of the activities that Antifa and BLM were responsible for and involved with throughout 2020. You know, some part of the Summer of Love, some parts of the Summer of Love can be said to have been peaceful protests that got out of hand and became violent, right? That a person can make that argument in good faith, not having a clear grasp of what's going on, right? But without a clear grasp and a clear understanding of how tourist riot instigators work, right? Keep in mind, of the several arrests that have been made in Georgia related to the current Treehouse autonomous zone, none of them have been Georgia locals, right? They're a bunch of rich kids from Democrat strongholds who have come to Georgia on daddy's credit card to set fires and murder police. It actually is far left as much of the city of Atlanta can be. It amazes me that that's the case, but it is. The arrests have all been people who crossed state lines with guns. Dad says one is from Georgia. That must be a new one. I missed that one. But what I was getting at is when you look at an autonomous zone, that's something that takes planning, organization, and explicit intent. Even if you don't understand how these agent provocateurs that come from out of state to attend what is ostensibly a peaceful protest with the intent to escalate it through rhetoric and activity into a violent riot for strategic purposes, funded by some of your favorite donors. You know, you will eat the bugs. If you don't have a grasp of that, then you can make the argument that some of these things are just peaceful protests that got out of hand. Okay. In the case of an autonomous zone, however, what you have is an organization of people who are selecting a piece of territory, going there with weapons, securing ground, and holding it by violence, by threat of force. Even if a shot's never fired, even if, unlike any of the autonomous zones that we've seen so far, and guys, there were a couple hundred, right? Everybody heard about the one in Portland, right? And a handful of other ones, the one in Atlanta after the ballot of Rayshard Brooks. Right, everybody heard about those, but they popped up all over the country through 2020. They were all over the place. And people got murdered. People were shot and killed in these autonomous zones much like this one, where they tried to kill a police officer. And, they caught a freedom rail for their trouble. But the fact is, you cannot look at an autonomous zone and understand it to be anything other than the premeditated and intentional conduct of war against the United States of America. Now, if I were willing to pull that back a little bit, I might pull it back to, in this case, they are engaged in the conduct of war against the state of Georgia. And so the correct answer is the immediate deployment of the National Guard with the mission order. The op ord should read the capture or elimination of all hostile forces in the affected zone. It's that simple. They have declared war against the state. So fight that war. Now, the blame rests in a large part on the authorities themselves. Not so much, it didn't so much go down this way in Georgia, but across the country throughout the Summer of Love, we saw people committing these crimes and then just being released. No consequences. Or catch and release. If they were arrested at all, the vast majority of them never even had a police encounter. Now, we have plenty of documented cases, video footage of the police arresting people for the crime of being assaulted by Antifa because it's the path of least resistance. The police would show up and see several people in black bloc beating someone with sticks, and they would arrest the victim and cart him off just to stop the situation, because they're not going to fight. They'd rather just hurt that one person than endanger themselves. Right? Because at the end of the day, what you're talking about is somebody who raised his hand and swore to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States of America, and then instead of deploying to close with, engage, and destroy the enemies of the United States, he chose to hang around in the country and play revenue collection against law-abiding citizens who were minding their own business right up until somebody with a gun decided to rob them. But throughout the Summer of Love, where we saw all these people suffering no consequences, with very, very limited exceptions, being bailed out by the president by the president's staffers and the vice president and her staffers, and most of the rest of your elected Democrat officials were contributing money to help get these people out of jail, to bail them out. They were actively providing material support to the enemies of the United States of America. Throughout the Summer of Love, the May 29th insurrection, and the insurrection that's going on here. And that every autonomous zone is the conduct of insurrection. It is the taking of territory by an armed force with the intent to control territory within a sovereign state and in direct contravention of the law. And they have been permitted to do so without consequence to such an extent that they understand correctly that they have the blessing of the state to do so. And that will continue to be the case until active measures are taken to dissuade that sort of criminality. We cannot continue to tolerate terrorists conducting war against the citizens of the United States of America in order to support the activity, ideology, and cult-like religion of the radical left, who seek to criminalize your energy, deplete your life savings, and destroy your freedom and prosperity. I'm going to put a pin in it there, guys. I've got to get out the door and get down the road. We love you. We appreciate you watching this morning. Do please like, share, and subscribe. And I cannot stress share. Share, share, share. And we will see you tomorrow.